Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. And actually, this is already the 20th episode of the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. I can't believe it's flown by so fast. I mean, of course it would fly by fast because I've been publishing every week. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to publish every week. There's a lot of different things coming up, work coming up, etc. But so far so good, and I'll keep it up as long as I can. In case you're stumbling into this and not too sure what you're listening to, I'm Willem van der Horst, your host. I'm a marketing and brand strategist, which means, in short, that I help brands figure out how best to communicate with their audiences. And personally, I'm also very interested in play and games. And for example, I always consider how to integrate elements and mechanics from games and marketing strategies. That's one thing I particularly enjoy. Otherwise, a lot of my experience is in digital marketing, but I've worked with a wide variety of large brands on many different types of marketing and advertising, communication, and campaigns. In the show, I have conversations with professionals from a wide variety of fields I'm interested in, often around marketing and advertising, media, and also game design. So in short, some of my favorite topics for both work and leisure. And I try to make the conversations as approachable as possible. So don't worry if ever you don't have an advertising background or you don't have a game design background. These should be, or they're intended to be, fun conversations and interesting conversations for everyone. And I had a good catch up on a different topic because I also podcast with my friend Julien in Paris, who runs the French tabletop role-playing game podcast Les Voix d'Altaride. I contribute to the podcast regularly. It's a talk show in French, if you're interested, where we talk about tabletop role-playing game theory. Or for those who like made-up words, kind of like we call it le jeu de rôlegie, which is role-playology or role-playosophy. I'm not sure exactly. So yeah, in the made-up words department. Anyhow, we were chatting about funding and looking at Patreon crowdfunding or online tipping campaigns. I'm not sure exactly what the proper vernacular is for that. For other podcasts. And I got quite curious. We were talking about it and looking and kind of wondering if it's worthwhile or not. And, so I'm going to look into it and do some research, but I thought I'd just mention it in case anybody listening has an opinion about these kinds of funding methods, like patreon.com. I'd be really happy to hear from you. So you can send me an email via the website. That's at www.icecreamforeveryone.net. Everything all spelled out and attached. Or you'd send me an email at Willem, so that's WILLEM at icecreamforeveryone.net. And of course, if you enjoy listening to this episode, it would be awesome if you just take a moment to post a rating or a review wherever it is you're listening to this, either via iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcast listening app is. I always appreciate to get feedback, and it really helps other people find the show. So if you can take a moment, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Don't forget, you can hear about other people on the podcast, and you can hear and read, really, my musings weekly in the Ice Cream Sunday email newsletter. Topics change every week, so every week if you sign up, you get a long-form-ish story, one full story in an email. And generally, I go from like a personal experience, and then I change topic. So it varies every week. So last week, I wrote about looking into the future. This week, who knows what the future is going to bring. So you can sign up directly on the website. Again, that's www.icecreamforeveryone.net. And you get a brand new story in your inbox every Sunday to just enjoy and read. And, it's meant to be a light, fun read that just takes between 5 to 10 minutes, usually less than 10 minutes, really. But enough for me for now. That's on to our guests. That's really who we want to be hearing about and from. I had a fantastic conversation with Anjali Ramachandran. I've met Anjali for the first time, probably, and we talk about that in the episode, but 2008, I think. And we used to meet and hang out and have friends in common at similar events. And I knew she had a bunch of different fascinating work and projects on, and she's super smart and super interesting. And I was really, really happy she said yes to be on the show. So we met up in London. Anjali is the head of innovation for PhD in London, and PhD is a global media agency, for those who don't know. She's also one of the co-founders of Ada's List. Ada's List is an online community for women in tech and business to support each other, communicate, talk about whatever women in business and tech talk about. I don't know what it is. But we talk about that in the show, so without revealing too much, essentially. There's a lot more we cover in the show. And last but not least, if ever you're in Barcelona, so if you're listening to this at the moment it's published in April 2016, if you're in Barcelona for the Internet Age Media Weekend from the 7th to the 10th of April. Anjali is going to be around there, and she's speaking at the event, so you should totally check that out. I highly recommend it. And that's it for now, so on to the show.
How are you?
Good. Thank you very much for making time and for the glitches. Like the microphone is not working right now, so we're recording from the computer. Hopefully it'll work out.
It will, don't worry. I mean, I can't tell you the number of meetings I've been in, presentations where there have been IT issues. I mean, if anything works smoothly, that is an unusual day.
It's one of the magic of technology,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
It never exactly works the way we want it.
Not yet. Not till, we can sort of travel through time and do things like that. No.
And even then, actually, if you don't want any glitches if you're traveling through time, I don't think that's a very good idea.
No, not at all.
So I usually start with what I'm calling the warm-up question.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that I was looking around, so we've known each other for several years.
Yes.
And we usually meet and find each other at the same kind of events around London. So I was away in Asia for a few years, and it's funny, I started bumping into a few different events again. And there's one thing that I read I think it's from your website, that you're a keen observer of crowds, maybe picked it up from having studied sociology.
Yeah.
Right? And if we turn the lights a little bit on you instead of you observing others, I was wondering how would you analyze how you behave in a crowd and a group?
Very interesting question. No, I don't think anyone's actually asked me that yet. How do I behave in a crowd? Because I like observing, which I've mentioned, I tend to sort of sit back, especially in larger crowds where I don't know anyone, rather than necessarily trying to find my way to the spotlight. I'm happy to be there if I'm asked, but it's not something that necessarily comes quite naturally to me, because I like seeing the ways other people behave with each other, the kinds of things they're talking about, just through osmosis, listening to conversations. Yes, eavesdropping is the more commonly used term, but not really eavesdropping, just sort of listening to the ambient noise that is happening in an event, what people are talking about, what the vibe is, what the buzz is. I think you can really get a finger on the pulse of the times you're living in, actually, especially when you go to large events. Smaller events, I think, are much more about trying to catch up with people that I know and have not seen in a while, typically, or mostly it's to learn something. So when I go to debates and discussions and lectures, I go to a lot of the LSE, for example, when I can. It is to listen to academics and, philosophers and practitioners of their individual fields talk about something that they've been doing, for decades, for years and years. And I really learn a lot just by listening to these different perspectives. And that behavior, I think, is a large part of who I am today.
Awesome. Thank you. So for a list, because it was quite impressive, when I start looking through your LinkedIn profile and your website. So you're the head of innovation for PhD, a global media agency right now.
Yeah.
You co-founded Ada's List, a group to support women in tech that started out in the UK but is expanding internationally, as far as I understand.
Yes.
You're an advisor for the Kids Club in Kampala since 2013, or you were for a while.
Yeah.
You write in your own website, One Size Fits One. You write inside of PhD. You're part of the executive leadership team for the innovation team of Omnicom, the holding group.
Yeah.
You write a weekly newsletter and maintain the website called Other Valleys, talking about diversity in tech coming from different parts of the world that we don't like elsewhere from the Silicon Valley, right? I say. You advise an organization called Academe.
Yeah.
That is professionals supporting
who
female-founded.
in female.
We'll talk about all this in detail, right?
Sure.
But I want to get the list. You're a mentor for the School of Communication Arts 2.0.
Yeah.
You were listed at the Digerati for 2015 by The Drum, I think.
Yes, that's right.
You're a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts. You're an alumni of the London School of Economics you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Do you sleep?
That is a question a lot of people have asked me. I do sleep and I love my sleep, I must say. It's not always very restful sleep because, my mind tends to be ticking through till I get to REM stage, I think. Just kidding. Yeah, I think I find the time somehow, and it's because I'm passionate about all these different things, and I want to contribute to these different organizations through the experiences that I have. And I think when you're motivated by something that is not unidimensional, for example, purely money or purely the desire to be famous or whatever it is. I mean, it is a combination of these for different things. Most of my side projects don't pay me actually, but my interest in them is because I want to see what I can give them and what I get back in return. I mean, it's always about what I get back in return. I mean, it's selfish from that point of view, but I think that's who human beings are. We do something when there's something in it for us. In my case, it's very personal. My attachment to these different sort of areas has sort of ebbed and flowed through the years. I mean, they've peaked at some points. They've been a bit quieter at different times of the year or over the last multiple years. And I think that has to do with what I'm doing at any given point in time. I don't see myself as having a 9-to-5 job. For me, it's about life in general and the different things that I can enhance my life with, different projects, different people I meet, different places I go to, people I listen to speak and so on. And so I think it's about making the time for things that you want to do and doing them because you're invested in it.
So it's interesting. I'm recently been doing a few more things, such as organizing this podcast. It takes a bit of a while, and more writing, things that I did aspire to on creative projects and personal projects. And the time question, the sleeping question is, it's a bit facetious, but the main thing that made a hell of a difference, and it's silly, is that I reduced the amount of TV shows I was watching.
Well, I actually haven't done that yet. I'm still watching a lot of TV shows.
You're managing all of that together.
I am, because I don't know if you remember back in the day, well, they're still very much there and still right, but Henry Jenkins and Grant McCracken both spoke a lot about the importance of cultural events and things. And I think today not TV, but content in the form of shows or Netflix. For me, I don't watch a lot of live TV, but whether it's Netflix or Amazon Instant Video or catch up, the quality of programming I find is incredibly high compared to what we had to watch earlier. Now, maybe that's because for a lot of these subscription services, we're not interrupted by ads. That's one possibility. But also, I think the access to talent and access to technology that enhances storytelling or capability of directors and writers and producers, screenplay writers as well, to work on and enhance an otherwise quite boring story is quite high. I mean, you have comic artists, graphic designers, things like that. And so I still watch a lot of that because I feel that is a part of modern culture. Memes come out of those, for example. And I really, really enjoy watching them.
Do you have a favorite right now, or a couple of favorites?
Right now, so I just finished watching Fuller House, which is
I've never heard of that.
Oh, okay. So I used to watch Full House when I was growing up.
It's the sequel to Full House.
It is the sequel to Full House. So back in the day, I used to love it when I was a kid. And it was amazing to see how they bridged that gap of 20 odd years, and currently watching The Good Wife, the current season. Put to bed many others. So just finished The House of Cards, the latest season. Finished that.
See, this is the one. I started watching. I watched one episode, I think 2, and then I was like, I gotta edit my podcast, and write my newsletter.
You have to be quite hard about where you need your sleep and your rest, and so very often I just switch it off when it's clear that I'm not getting anything from the show, because I just know my mind isn't there anymore. So that's when I switch off and go to something else. All right,
let's track back on where did you grow up?
So I've had quite a sort of diverse upbringing in that sense. I was born in the UK, but grew up largely in India and Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
and then back to India again. So that's where I completed my schooling there. So I'm technically...
So where in the UK and then where in India?
Where in India? I was born in Wales.
Okay.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that. They often laugh when they find out. But I left when I was 4 or 5 years old because my parents moved back. I lived there for a couple of years in South India, in what is now Chennai. I still call it Madras.
Yeah.
And then Coimbatore. And then my dad got a job in Saudi Arabia, so we lived there for a good 7 years. And then moved back to India, to Coimbatore.
Riyadh or where?
No, this place called Al-Hassa, which is a couple of hours away from Dammam and Tehran. Tehran was the nearest airport.
So you were still pretty young at that age. That was childhood, right?
Yeah, childhood.
Do you remember much of it? Is it particular being over there? Or?
I do. I remember that it was very closeted atmosphere. Women didn't have any freedom.
Of course.
And
well, obviously, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you had to wear I was still too small. I mean, I left just around the time that I had to start wearing the abaya.
Right.
But my mother had to wear it.
Yeah.
Everyone I knew had to wear it. Luckily, we grew up in a sort of cosmopolitan, sort of gated community where, there were lots of expats. So it wasn't as bad inside, as long as we were inside. But outside, it was very, very different. Women can't drive. Right now, they're fighting for it in Saudi Arabia. So I still track what's going on. And I really hope they get there. There are women who are fighting that role. There are no cinema theaters. You can't go anywhere alone unless you're accompanied by a male who is your father or a very close member of the family, brother, son. And it was...
What was your father doing?
He was a doctor.
Okay.
So he's just working in the local hospitals there.
Oh, cool.
But it was also the time of the Gulf War. So it was really interesting growing up then, because I do remember, for example, having to wear gas masks and having our windows boarded up with aluminum foil to make sure. I mean, we were never in that much danger, but I could hear aircraft flying in the distance, and occasional bombs exploding, but nowhere near. Yeah. They were a good distance away.
Yeah, but still pretty freaky, and images that would probably stick really.
And then obviously you couldn't go out during those times and stuff like that. So it was very interesting. I mean, a lot of Americans, when you went to the shopping areas of Al Khobar and stuff like that, because we were very near Aramco, which is one of the oil. They get the oil for America in that area, and the army was there as well. But there was still a lot of brands. So I still remember, being a big fan of KFC. KFC, and that shows what was big then. But
I'm sure it's bigger now.
Yeah, probably not here anymore. I mean, I hate KFC. I don't eat it anymore now in England. But growing up, those brands were quite big. A lot of them were local brands, of course, and anyone living in the Middle East who has a relationship to the Middle East will be aware of those brands. I was mentioning one of them to someone recently, Tang, for example, and then
the orange drink.
Yeah. And Nada, which is
so for anybody
dairy.
listening who doesn't know, it's an orange.
Yeah, it's like...
Well, it's an orange fizzy drink.
It is orange fizzy drink, yeah.
Basically. Like Orangina, but
yeah.
There's the Tang.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not around in the UK, is it?
It's not around in the UK, no.
They used to have really famous ads.
Yeah, a very Middle East thing. And then, Nada yogurt. I don't know why. I think it's because as a kid, we had a school trip to a dairy farm where they actually produced that. Yogurt. So it's normal, yogurt. But chocolate, lots of dates, stuff like that. It was a very interesting time for me.
So, and then as a teenager, moved back to the UK?
Moved back to India.
To India, okay.
Yeah, so I finished high school there.
Okay.
And that was a very different atmosphere. I mean,
what kind of stuff were you into? Like, did you already have that interest in technology or?
Not really. No. And I must say, I'm rather jealous of people who grew up here because they are always talking about the BBC microbit and the things that they had access to. All I remember was the Atari, which I played growing up. I Super Mario, Prince of Persia, and things like that. But back in India, no, technology was not that. Well, I will say that not in high school, but once I hit just crossing over that time from high school to universities, when things like ICQ.
Right.
became famous. Well, became really cool. So that's when Hotmail started to become big. So I had an account which was always used because it was dial-up, and no one had home accounts. So we used to go to internet cafes.
Yes.
Wait for the damn thing to dial up. So that tone is so distinct. The dial-up tone is still in my mind. And we used to, when I say we, I mean my friends, my university friends, and I used to go there to these little internet cafes and access our email in this communal setting. It was. I still remember the thrill of receiving an email from someone really, really far away.
Yes.
Because it was, it's not something that ever existed before. So it was very exciting time. And yeah, I think.
Did you send because it's just making me think of when I remember the same thing about dialing up. I was super excited about email and starting to get into American ICQ and at the same time as a teenager, I used to send and receive a lot of handwritten letters with friends.
Yes.
Did you also do that?
I did, actually. I did, I have to say. I had a couple of pen pals even, completely lost touch with now. But yes, I did write to my school friends, handwritten letters, sorry. See, there you go, emails taking over the world. I did write handwritten letters.
Yeah, that's one thing that's still very, very nice, but I haven't done it in a few years.
No, I mean, I occasionally send postcards now when I travel.
Yeah.
I have one friend who sends postcards from wherever in the world she is. So I think, I do as well. Not to a lot of people, though, just a handful of people, just to keep that habit going. But it's because when I see my handwriting, I don't see too many people's handwriting at the moment, So it's still good to see handwriting because everything else is on the laptop. It's all typed, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And so as we mentioned earlier, you studied sociology.
Yes.
And then
I did social policy, a master's in social policy after that at the LSE. So I finished my undergrad in India and then came to the LSE to do my master's, which was still, related to what I studied, sociology, social policy. I focused on urban development and housing, actually.
Did you have an idea in mind about what you wanted to do? Is that just interesting topic for you? Or?
No, well, so I think anyone who does a course in social policy, development studies, that kind of thing, does ultimately want to work, or did at the time. Or maybe I'm putting words into people's mouths. I did want to work with the UN at that point,
right.
or aid organizations, international aid organizations that were doing interesting work on the ground. My master's thesis was on social capital, for which I actually went back to India to a slum in Delhi, to a couple of slums in Delhi, to speak to people who were living in that situation, to see what they thought. It was interesting. Social capital, obviously, and I had to use the local language to ask them about their priorities, to sort of divide those priorities by what the model of social capital I was using at the time. But now, what I do now, I still go back to that, because social capital is the reason that we all do what we do. Can
you explain what it is?
Sure. So at the time, it was this model that spoke about the reasons people in across the world, but especially in poor areas, do what they do. They look to build on their family networks, to build on financial networks. So any source that gives them money, any source that gives them the support that they need so that they can go out and work. So they need family, friends to take care of kids, for example. So building out the different reasons people do stuff, do things in their lives, actually. And it all came down to different facets of, some form of collecting social capital, so that enable them to do what they still do. And even today, when we do what we do, so one of the earlier questions you asked me, which is how do I find time to do this? Yeah. In a way, it is because I want to build on my social capital. To that's the reason. No man is an island, as the saying goes. We're part of a society, and we live in a society, and it is to enrich our experiences with other people, or through the networks that we have access to, that we do these different things that we do.
Absolutely.
So that's what my master's thesis was. And I went on to work with the DFID on a research project based in India for a year. Then I worked with the non-profit in India, again in Bangalore, looking at the education system there, which is still really bad. It was terrible. So working with public schools that didn't have any form of infrastructure whatsoever to speak of. When I'm talking basic toilets, basic, water facilities, nothing. Those things didn't exist for kids who were going to those schools. And so we were trying to work with the state government to see whether we could, work with them to based on the US accountancy framework that existed, the GAAP, and to see whether those principles could be used to hold people to account in a more robust manner. It was really interesting. And then completely by chance, really, I wasn't really planning this, but I met someone who worked at Nike, when I was in Bangalore, and she asked me whether I was interested in that, and I just gave it a shot and never looked back after that. So
what were you doing for them?
I was a product line coordinator, which meant that so Nike at the time was just setting up their official India branch.
Okay.
It was operating through franchisees till then, and it was to manage their footwear product line for women and for a couple of other sports.
Right.
And it was a fascinating job, and it's a brilliant company in terms of the process that they have. Because what I did meant that I needed to be aware of the current product range, the product range just gone by, so that I could make sure that, any holes in stock could be plugged when it came to being in store, and future lines as well, to make sure that the market was catered to for the next season. And I had to work with finance and marketing and ops, and it was a really interesting role in terms of understanding the life cycle of a product.
Wow.
And it was a great, absolutely fantastic experience. And
one question, so before we go more into the career side of things, so you I was just thinking, you've grown up and educated and lived in a bunch of different places. And I did as well, so quite international. Do you identify with a particular place or origin? Like, do you think of yourself as British, Indian, or something else, or?
Citizen of the world.
Culturally, I guess, right?
Culturally, I would say I'm Indian. I mean, I spent, my family is Indian.
Yeah.
I grew up there for key parts of my life, but I still do call myself a citizen of the world, because I could be at home almost anywhere at this point, and it's what you make of the places that you are in. Really, you can choose to be miserable, or you can choose to be curious and go and find out about the place that you're in. I mean, of course, it's not as simple as say it and that's the way it is, because circumstance does play a big role in your attitude and your approach. If you're miserable in a place for various reasons, other personal reasons, you're never going to like a place. I have a friend who had a miserable time in New York, but that had nothing to do with the city. It had to do with what she was going through. So I think I personally don't think that I belong to one place at this point. I mean, London is my home for now, but I don't know. Growing up,
always thinking about what you're going to do when you grow up.
Yeah, it could be anywhere.
I love that question, by the way, and I think I'm going to ask myself that question until the day I die, probably, somehow, right?
Life has ways of, just working in methods that you didn't even expect. But
So you're head of innovation at PhD now, skipping a few things. Like, what does it mean, and what does it involve? Because it sounds exciting as a title, but it's one of those where you're like, I don't really know what that person's doing.
I know. And innovation today is a catch-all phrase. Seriously, that's quite frustrating for me as a person who has that title in my job description. It means, and I will speak for what it means. In my specific role.
Yeah, for what you've been doing.
Exactly.
You can't talk for others.
Exactly, because I know it means different things for different organizations and different people who are doing that role in those organizations. But it means being able to try and find a way to make interesting new things happen, working within the constraints of the system that you already are in. Okay. So, for example, PhD is part of Omnicom, and there are different systems and rules in place, and I need to find out, given that framework, how can I make something new, like startup, for example, a new technology, how would it fit best within the framework that we have? And very often it doesn't work, because there are internal tools and systems that would mean that that particular technology wouldn't add a lot to what we already have, but very often it can add a lot. And so in those cases, it is, which clients would it make sense for?
Yeah.
What, campaigns are they working on that it would, add significantly to in terms of their reach or their brand.
Is there by any chance an example of something you've done in the past that you might be able to talk about that illustrates a little bit that point, or?
So one of the companies that we work with, this is a very basic example really, is Revu, which is a customer review and ratings company. Quite big now. They're not a startup anymore at all. But I've worked with a lot of the teams inside the building, client teams, to see how customer ratings and reviews can enhance their e-commerce proposition or their brand. Because very often today, when people buy something, it's on the basis of word of mouth.
Yes.
And when you're buying something and it's not word of mouth in terms of somebody that you want to know the experience of somebody that has that product. And so this particular technology, once it's integrated in your site, into your website, can really help that process. It can help people, for example, ask existing customers, does it sort out this particular problem that I have? And it's a peer-to-peer question and answer mechanism that exists there as well. So it's trying to help client teams understand why this particular thing would answer a lot of problems that the client has, and then to work with both parties to see how it can best be integrated. Yeah,
cool. Okay. Just another question I was just thinking about switching topics, but I was thinking about writing because it's something that interests me as well, and I'm interested in getting better with my writing. And you've been consistently writing in your blog since, 2008? Or even earlier?
Around then, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, you're writing in the Valleys, and you write for a bunch of different publications.
Yeah.
Did you do anything or study anything in particular for your writing? Or
No, I can't see. I mean, 2008 is when my current professional blog, I did start. I had personal blogs way before that, going all the way back to, or 3 or 4 even. But did I study anything specific? No, but I always loved languages. English was one of my favorite subjects in school. And with blogging, it's tricky because I remember around the time that we originally met, there were so many people blogging, even in London, around the industry, here in the UK, and a lot of them have stopped for various reasons. I mean, again, it's technology, isn't it? You have Twitter now, you have Facebook, you have WhatsApp, you have Tumblr, you have Medium, and those things didn't exist then. Then it was all about the personal blog, and I didn't study anything specific, but I guess that is something that has just come through habit.
Okay.
I remember I did do a course on film criticism when I was in New York. I was in New York for a year before I moved to London, and I worked with a film festival then at the time. And so, that was a large part of my life then. I watched a lot of independent movies in the theaters, and
How did you get into that? Like, how did that?
That was just again completely by chance. My husband moved there at the time, and I wanted to see, because I was really interested in films in general, and I met.
What kind of film festival was it? Had a theme, or?
It was basically South Asian independent and feature and shorts, and it was. It still exists under a different name now, but met a lot of interesting filmmakers, people who worked with film in various capacities, whether as producers or writers. And I guess what I did then was try and use that experience. So I did a writing course in film criticism then at NYU's School of Continuing Professional Studies. Very short course. But I've always been interested in writing. I've written for multiple publications through the years, just ad hoc contributions. I think my blog has sort of forced me to hold myself to account in a bit, because I guess as a person, I don't want to see it languish for some reason. So I don't blog every day. Yeah. I would love to, but it's sort of, there's always that place that I know that I need to go back to. So even though I do write, run ADAS lists and ADAS list and other valleys and all these other things now, that's still there, and I still do go and write about stuff that I personally am seeing or thinking about now, every now and then.
Cool. Well, let's talk about Ada's List a little bit.
Sure.
How did it come about?
So Ada's List is for the listeners who don't know what it is, it's a global network of for women in technology that started in 2013 on Ada Lovelace Day. So that's why it's called Ada's List. It's named after Ada Lovelace, the first female computer programmer, daughter of Lord Byron. And it was started because one of my co-founders, my friend Marisi, moved over from the US to the UK, around then a bit earlier. And the US still has a lot of strong communities for women working in the technology space, and that didn't exist in the UK. So when she came, she was looking for other people to start a UK version of this sort of network. And I was introduced to her, and we thought it was a great idea. And then a couple of other people as well, Nikki Sprins and Rosa Birch, the four of us started Ada's List. And it's been 2.5 years now. We celebrated our second birthday last October, and it grew from a really small Google group to today over 2,200 people almost. In January this year, we switched to a completely new software platform called Mobilize, which gives us more flexibility. And Google Groups is completely, it's not structured at all. After a point, email just does become too overwhelming when you're talking about a group of that size. And so this helps us to keep conversations a bit more streamlined and give people the opportunity to reach out to other people, other women in tech that are, for example, working in their specific area of expertise. It acts as a de facto directory as well. So, you can actually see who else is a member if you so choose. But what Ada's List at its heart does or wants to do is create a world that is more equal than it currently is. Technology is a field that has been beset by problems for many years now, because it's a field that is male dominated. When women are in a technology oriented work environment, it's not always the best experience. And so it's a place for women to start talking about opportunities and advice and get access to jobs, build a pipeline of people, but crucially talk about the question of diversity, and not just gender diversity. In that respect, there are a lot of groups now and organizations that are doing some brilliant work in that respect. But Ada's List wants to be about diversity that goes beyond gender. It's about age, it's about sexual orientation. We don't want to have any restrictions in terms of what diversity should or does mean. It's all encompassing. It's intersectional, as the phrase, as a word often used to describe this goes. And we want to get to a point where organizations, we place a lot of the onus on organizations to take responsibility, for example, to make sure that they have workplaces that are welcoming of all kinds of people. Right at the moment, it's mostly women and minorities that need that kind of support. Yeah, absolutely, because most technology companies aren't as supportive as they should be. There are a lot of companies that are acknowledging this now and doing some good work, which is amazing. But we want all organizations to acknowledge and get to that point, whether it's in terms of maternity policy, in terms of hiring policies, in terms of facilities that are available to their workforce, and
so as a group, does it mean as a group that you're a network to be able to communicate with each other, organize events? Does that mean you also, I don't know if lobby is the right word, but lobby groups, organizations, companies?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we're working on at the moment, is to get funding to be able to run things like workshops, where we can train people on what to look out for when if they want to build an organization and a company that is the best possible place for a male or a female to work in. Right? And Facebook has, unconscious bias training, for example, but working on things like that for investors. Female founders are amongst the least funded when it comes to the funding that goes into them. In America, Project Diana recently looked at the number of Black female founders that get funding, and it is minuscule. It is absolutely, it's something like 0.8 8% or something. And when you talk in terms of the numbers that these people get compared to what men get, it's like $20,000 or $30,000 for women and then $1 million plus for men. So that disparity is huge. And how do you get investors to become more aware of who they are funding and why they're funding these people, what they should be looking out for, to make sure that they're giving all people and all entrepreneurs an equal chance to succeed, and not just a specific kind that happens to be the mirror image of someone that they have already funded, or like them, basically people like them. So there's multiple strands that we need to tackle, and that Ada's List is consciously trying to tackle now and going forward. So there's obviously the investment perspective, there's the job, there's a hiring perspective. How many women are you interviewing for every position? Yes. Very often there are no women interviewed, so that means women will make it, and that means ultimately leadership. When you talk about leadership, if you have a 90-95% male board, then you're never going to get women looking at a company and saying, oh, that looks like a company that would support me in my career. Let me apply there. No, because they haven't seen that company is walking the talk and promoting women and getting them to leadership levels. So obviously it's not going to be a company that, is going to be supportive of, or that supportive at least, of any woman who is ambitious and wants to make a change and a difference in her career.
Yeah.
So it's all these different things that we want to tackle. And yeah, any of your listeners, if they belong to a company that gives grants or funds or wants to work with us on this sponsorship basis, we'd love to talk to them.
Yeah, and of course, for any women interested, they can sign up and register.
Absolutely.
And,
If you're a woman,
and I'll put all the links, of course.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. If you're a woman who works in tech, then absolutely please do apply to join us. It's adaslist.co/join/join, and there's a short form, and we hope to be able to get you on board a few weeks after that.
Brilliant. Excellent. Mm-hmm. This is exciting. And the question of diversity is a big one that's coming through. But I'm glad that it's being talked about. And I don't know if it's because I'm paying attention to it, but I think there's generally more, at least more talk. Right? Yes. There's still a lot of work to do. But
yeah, absolutely. No, it is. There are some brilliant organizations working on the cause of girls, getting more girls into tech and more women staying in tech. But I do want to say that there are a lot of companies and people just talking. And I guess at Ada's List, and me as a person, we've got to the point, me and Mauricio, the organization, we've got to a point where we want to talk to people who are actually doing and not just talking. Yeah. Because talk is easy, it's cheap, it's important, yes, but when you talk, if you can't say, I'm talking from the point of, with experience to back me up. My company has promoted this many women, my company has got this many women on the board, then you're paying lip service to something. And that, I think, after a point, people are beginning to question that. Yeah. And that's something that didn't happen as much on Twitter, for example, but there are more and more people speaking up on Twitter on things like that. So if you're an organization who wants to support it but hasn't done actually anything to, in a concrete way to change that status quo, then you will be asked questions.
Yeah. And you might have just answered one of the other questions I was thinking of at some point, but I read, I can't remember what it was, maybe on your LinkedIn profile, something that you said, something like, you believe more in the power of impact than conversation. Yeah. And I was wondering what you meant, but it may be just what you were just saying.
Exactly. It's whether it's what I do in my day-to-day, which is innovation at a media agency, or whether it's Ada's List, I try, and I don't always succeed. It's very, very hard, in fact, given what I do, to succeed at the first shot. Try to make sure that I try to have concrete impact. When I work with people or work with companies, don't shy away from telling them things as they are, because I wager that they have enough people telling them that things are brilliant, things are fine, the industry is going to be, just the way it is, and the company will be at the top forever. And then one fine day, Kodak goes bust because they didn't think of Instagram, right? Or they didn't, pay any attention to it. And they're the company that made cameras. And that's the most commonly mentioned example. I don't want to be the person who says that yet again, but, there are so many cases now, and I won't mention the big unicorns that are succeeding where, hotel companies haven't, Airbnb, for example.
And that's part of the reason why I'm interested in it as well. I mean, one, I'm part of the majority being a white guy. And I'm like, so I can't. I think
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Well, no, I think it's important that I look elsewhere. I'm just like my job in planning because if I'm part of the majority, I'm not going to be seeing anything interesting because I'm just blind to it. So I have to make an effort to go and look out. And also, you don't get anything very interesting by reproducing the same things and the same patterns with the same people. You have to go. That's part of. It's not just because it's politically correct that I think it's important to have diversity. It's because that's what creates new ideas and new perspectives.
Exactly. Absolutely right. And that's such a lovely segue into The Other Valleys, which is my other project. So I started The Other Valleys again 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago now, to look at the interesting things happening from both a technology and a creative perspective in the emerging markets. Now, this has to do, obviously, for the fact of that I actually come from India and have lived in other parts of the world that are not, the West, as it were, the US, the UK. But it is also because at that point, and things have changed since then, but at that point, when I started the newsletter, there were not that many publications or blogs or, events, at least not based here, that were looking at other parts of the world. So it was quite an insular industry from that point of view. I'm not saying they didn't exist at all, but they were few and far between, or definitely not as common as they are now. And in the intervening 2 years, there are some great publications that have started Africa and Asia or Latin America branches. For example, Quartz started Quartz Africa. The Guardian now exists in multiple parts of the world. It's not just a UK-based organization anymore.
Tech in Asia.
Tech in Asia is brilliant, absolutely. Lots of organizations now, whether they have, so TechCrunch has an Asia, bureau, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, they've all had it, but they're focusing on tech more and more. When I started the newsletter, that wasn't the case. And so I started it as a way to pull in from the places that I knew of that were not, US and UK oriented, just interesting news, links, companies and projects that were interesting me as someone who had lived abroad, but also has an understanding of the problems that those parts of the world have that we don't have living here in the West, because they approach problems in a very different way very often. And some of those business models are fascinating. They're not always super successful, but they're making a big difference in the societies that they operate in. So those kinds of models, and there are some incredibly successful ones as well. So wanted to see how I could be inspired by some of these projects. And now the places I look to are more, as I said, because all these publications have international bureaus, but there are still a lot of projects and companies working on stuff, organizations working on stuff that are somewhat under the radar. And I found an audience that wants to listen to that. So like you mentioned, if you look at the same sources, you will come up with the same ideas. You will come up with the same kind of campaigns. Very often they are not attuned to the needs of your audience because your audience has moved on. Or they are looking at different parts of the world. Plus, we live in a global world now, right? The internet has broken all boundaries. So whether you're based in the UK, the US, or Australia, or China, or Brazil, or Namibia, you should want to know what's going on outside your borders. And I guess that's what The Other Valleys aims to do, from the perspective of someone who lives very much in London, in a Western country, but is trying to find out the interesting things that are happening in these other pockets to see where the inspiration can come from. Now, we might have very different problems, but that doesn't mean that we can't take inspiration from the way someone at the other end of the world has looked at a problem that in many ways has parallels with what we might be doing now, or in one way has a parallel at least. So it's making those connections and constantly exposing yourself to those experiences, projects, that kind of inspiration that forces you out of your comfort zone, forces you to draw a line. There's that popular puzzle, connect these
The 9
connect.
dots?
Yeah, the dots that in a way
With
that
connect 9 dots with 4 lines.
exactly. And
I'll put that up.
do that. That's I always thought that was a really interesting
It's a great one.
conundrum to have. And unless you go outside the lines, sometimes it's you'd never get to the answer. So yeah that's part of it.
I really am enjoying this conversation, but I'm mindful of time, so we're going to have to wrap up, unfortunately. I'm sure we could have a long conversation, but let's wrap up with the couple of questions I usually ask at the end. So obviously This is the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. It's got to be an ice cream question.
Yeah.
I've been testing a new question. What's a favorite food of yours, or a food that you think should be made into an ice cream, or that you'd like to try as an ice cream?
That doesn't exist already?
Well, it's difficult to say whether it exists or not, but let's say that you haven't tried.
Okay. I was going to go with my default answer because it's both a food and an ice cream, which is strawberry cheesecake.
Strawberry cheesecake is a good one.
But that
It
is,
does
it
exist. It's not an original one, but there is nothing wrong with that necessarily.
No, I would like to taste.
That's your default food as well?
Well, one off. Where it exists, that is always my default. It's not available everywhere though. If you think about it, This is bizarre, but I would like to taste what chili ice cream tastes like.
Chili ice cream.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds. But I could imagine because I've tasted ice creams with chili in, like a chocolate chili, for example.
Yeah.
But a fresh chili really does taste good. There's something really about it.
It does, but
really, really
I don't know what.
But I've not tried it as an ice cream.
I don't think it exists, to be honest. But if it did, I wonder what that would taste like because it has to be ice creamy, so not as hot, but still some of the spice of the.
I think it could be a sorbet.
Could be a sorbet. Yeah.
My brother's a chef. I'm gonna ask him.
Excellent. Let me know what he says.
That. Cool, brilliant. Another interest of mine, and I'll alternate and talk about that in the podcast, is gaming. Mm-hmm. Tabletop games, in particular video games. Do you play games?
I'm not a super avid gamer, but I do like hearing what interesting ones. I have friends who play them all the time, and I play recreational ones.
Is there something that stuck in the past, I don't know, however many years, that's something that you've either tried or heard of that you like?
Quiz Up, which is the app that asks you. It's a quiz game essentially.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then Words with Friends.
Cool.
Which is Scrabble, which is something I've grown up playing.
Yeah. Last one, and we didn't really have time to go much into that, but branding, advertising. Is there an ad campaign you've seen recently that you really, really enjoyed? Or something that's memorable from any time that you really liked?
Well, really, Sport England's This Girl Can was brilliant. And I saw the director of the ad speak at an event last year, and it's that ad for some reason always brings tears to my eyes. And it's obviously because I'm a woman and I work in the industry. It's very hard to encapsulate the emotions and the experiences of so many different kinds of women in a short film. I thought that was a great campaign.
I'll have the video on it was a really, really good campaign.
Yeah.
And it deservedly won a bunch of awards.
Absolutely. I think that would be
brilliant.
it.
All right, so if people want to follow you online, so obviously they can sign up to Ada's List.
Yes.
They can find you on Twitter at
Anjali28.
Yeah. Your blog is One Size Fits One.
Yes,
which is a fantastic name, by the way.
Thank
I really
you,
like it.
thank you. Yeah.
And I agree with you that it's not a one size fits all. Everybody wants that, but actually, solutions should be catered and tailored for the problem
your
at hand.
specific case. Yeah.
Anything else online you want to?
Othervalues.net. That's the website. And the newsletter. So it started, as I mentioned, as a newsletter, but last month it became an actual website. So you can sign up for the newsletter at tinyletter.com/othervalues. And othervalues.net is the website. I think.
Are you speaking anywhere soon or anything?
Yes, I am
up?
actually. So I'm speaking at the Internet Age Media Conference in Barcelona.
All right. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. Between the 7th and the 10th of April. So if you're in Barcelona or you're going to be in Barcelona, do check it out. Check it out online and get a ticket and come along.
Brilliant. Anjali, thank you so much for your time. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, Willem. It's been amazing.
All right. Well, that's already another episode wrapping up. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed it. I so appreciate your time. I know it takes a while. It's a certain commitment to be putting an hour of your time inside of this. And if you've been listening for so long and you're listening still now, then you probably enjoyed it. So if you did, how about sharing it with a friend? You can send them a link to the file, just forward an email or share it or post it on your favorite social network. I mean, basically, I just want for more people to be listening to this. I got the selfish pleasure of having a conversation with Anjali, but of course, the whole idea is to spread this to other people who listen to podcasts, who might be interested in marketing, media, advertising, women in tech, or whatever it is, or diversity altogether, as we talk about in the episode. Another thing, if you have feedback, questions, comments, I would really love to hear from you. You can contact me on Twitter. My username is @HippoWill. That's HIPPOWILL, HippoWill. You can post a comment on the Ice Cream for Everyone Facebook page. You can find it on Facebook. Leave a review on iTunes. You can send me an email, willem@icecreamforeveryone.net. Let's see what else. I mean, there's loads of different places. You just Google my name. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Google+. I have a Tumblr somewhere I haven't updated in years. I'm sure there's like a few other broken and dead social media accounts. I have an LO account, if ever you're still using that. I have to admit, never really got into it. Anyhow, so yeah, you just like Google the name of the show, Google my name, send me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. And that's about it for now. Until next time, have fun. Bye-bye.